The countdown is on, but you're not alone. This is Countdown to College, your weekly guide from EducationQuest Foundation, here to help you plan, apply, and pay for college one step at a time. I'm your host, Gage, and today I am happy to be joined once again by Jacquie Butler, a senior college planning specialist here at EducationQuest. Hi, Jacquie. Thank you for coming back.
Well, you're certainly welcome.
So, last episode was all about the basics of financial aid, which, if you haven't gotten the chance, go ahead and give that episode a listen. There was lots of really great tips and info, especially for anyone who is maybe it's their first time dealing with financial aid. There was lots of great, like, foundational info in there. But this episode is going to be all about preparing to fill out the FAFSA form. Because, as a reminder, the FAFSA opens on October 1st. It's going to be here before we know it, and there's a lot of prep work you can get out of the way that will make the process easier. So, Jacquie, let's just kick us off by, for families who maybe don't know, what is the FAFSA and why is it so important?
All right. Well, FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And you ask, why is it important? Well, number one, it's a free form that students and parents fill out to be considered for federal, state, and college-based financial aid. Also, it is now a graduation requirement for graduating seniors in the state of Nebraska.
We use the analogy a lot too, but it's kind of your key to financial aid, if you
It
will.
is. It really is. It opens up a lot of doors for students.
And so we said that, the FAFSA opens on October 1st, but when should students and families complete the FAFSA? Are there any benefits to doing it early? Is it okay to wait? What's your opinion on that?
Mhm. So the 26-27 FAFSA, like you said, opens this October 1st. So students are filling it out almost a year in advance of attending college. Um, to receive the best financial aid package that the student qualifies for, it's always best to get that FAFSA done as soon as possible. In addition, there are some types of financial aid that are awarded on a first come, first served basis. So again, it is in the student's best interest to get it done, get it out of the way, and then see what the college has to offer in aid.
Yeah, we talked about it last episode, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again in this episode and future episodes, but set reminders for yourself because some of these
Mhm.
deadlines, like you'll want to make sure you get onto these. Like Jackie said, it's first come, first serve. So
Right.
And so I remember back when I was in high school, there were some people who would avoid the FAFSA or not want to do it because they believe you wouldn't qualify for aid. Is there a reason why every student should complete the FAFSA even if they think they won't get anything?
Well, funny you should say that because we do get parents who ask that question often. But first of all, it's a free form to complete, so it doesn't cost families anything to fill it out and find out what they might qualify for. Also, the FAFSA is used for some scholarships as well as um, awarding state grants and college-based awards. So it's important to position yourself to be considered for those types of aid. Also, yes, some students will complete the FAFSA and only qualify for student loans, but you're not obligated to take out anything that you don't want to or anything that's being offered. Gauge the old saying, it's better to have and not need than need and not have. At least if you complete the FAFSA and the students only offered loans, they're there if you need them. And if you don't, you can just decline them.
Yeah, it's a great, like we talked about, it's the key to financial aid, right? And I was
Right.
someone who, didn't necessarily qualify for some more of like the grant type aid and stuff. But once I got into college, actually, a lot of the scholarship applications required that you fit out the FAFSA anyway. So
Right. Right.
better safe than sorry, is what we like to say.
Absolutely.
So we all know, at least hopefully know by now, that in Nebraska, FAFSA completion is now tied to high school graduation. So what does this requirement actually mean for students?
Well, It might feel like there's one more thing for those seniors to complete before they are able to graduate. But that graduation requirement's actually a good thing because every year there were, millions of dollars left on the table for college students simply because they didn't apply for the FAFSA. Going back to that last question, they didn't think they would qualify. Um, so, to solve that issue, Nebraska passed legislation to make the FAFSA a high school graduation requirement. Students can opt out of that requirement, but we strongly encourage them to just complete the FAFSA and see how they can make college possible. So again, fill it out. You're not obligated to take anything out if it's just student loans or what have you. So it's just always best to get it completed. You just never know what other type of aid that the doors might open for.
I do remember senior year, very senioritis starts to kick in, and
Yep,
you're like,
it
I don't want to
does.
do anything else. But we've talked about it in the last episode too. The forum takes way less time than it used to now. So
Mhm.
just get it out of the way. Then you don't have to worry about it when you go into college.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So can you explain the process? We're going to actually shift into completing the FAFSA now. Can you explain the process of creating a federal student aid account and why both the student and parent need one?
Mhm. Well, like you said, the student and at least one parent should both create what's called an FSA ID. It stands for Federal Student Aid Identification. So they will apply for that or create that account at studentaid.gov. It consists of a username and password is what it really is. And when setting up your account, your cell phone and your email address will need to be verified. Students should use a personal email address. So do not use your school email address because once you graduate from high school, you will no longer have access to that email account. The FSA IDs are used to log into the FAFSA. They're used to sign the FAFSA. When a student wants to, make sure that it was processed and they log back into studentaid.gov, they'll be able to access that FAFSA submission summary that lets them know, yes, indeed, it was processed and it was passed on to the colleges you listed on the FAFSA form. And if parents or if the student wants to take out student loans or parents want to take out a Parent Plus loan, they will need to use those FSA IDs to log in and complete that paperwork. The usernames and passwords are the FSA ID. They're extremely important. So make sure that you're writing them down and keeping them in a safe place because you're going to be using them each year that you fill out a FAFSA form for that following year's college.
And this is one of the things that you can do now, right? You don't have to wait until
Mhm.
October 1st.
Absolutely. Nope, you can do it now.
Yeah, that's great. Because then I just remember I feel like I was rushed my first time I did my FAFSA. I didn't have my FSA ID ready, so I had to wait to
Yeah.
verify the email and everything. By then, it was already like past the opening like session. So yeah, just get it done early.
Absolutely.
And speaking of more things to prep, what financial documents or information should families gather ahead of time so they're not scrambling to pull everything together?
Okay, so I have a list here. Parents and students will need their 2024 federal tax return. So not the state return, it will be the federal tax return. Um, they will also need, if they receive any child support, they will need to report the total amount of child support received in the last completed calendar year. And they will have to report for all children in the household, so that entire sum. Um, Parents and students will need to know their current value, and current value means as of the day you're filling out the FAFSA. So their current value of their checking and savings account balances and any investments. So investments are things like stocks, CDs, savings bonds, mutual funds. If parents or perhaps a student has some a property that they rent out to someone else, they will have to list the value minus debt against that rental property. If a family has a 529 college savings account, they will report the amount or the value only for the student that they're completing the FAFSA for. Okay, so they don't have to report it for any other children, just for the student completing the FAFSA. If a family owns a business, so a business, for purposes of the FAFSA, a business is something other than a farming or ranching operation. So if a family owns a business, 50% or more ownership, they employ less than 100 people, and they actively participate in the business, they do not have to report it any longer. So if you don't meet all three of those, if any of those, you have more than 100 employees, or you own less than 50%, or you don't actively participate, then you would have to list the net worth of that business. So again, if you own the majority, have less than 100 employees, and you actively participate in the business, you do not have to report it. If you have a farming or ranching operation, as long as well, I say this is kind of a gray area. The rule is, as long as you live on the farm. Some people don't necessarily live on the farm. They might live in town, but they have their farm ground, etc. So, but as long as you live on the farm, and then you have to actively participate in the farming or ranching operation, and it's your main source of income, you again will not have to report it. That's a change for 26-27, so it will no longer have to be reported. However, if you are a member of like a family corporation or partnership, and let's say, I'll give you this example. Let's say 3 siblings have shares or a portion of a family partnership or corporation, and your 2 brothers actively participate in the farming operation, and you maybe have a job in town. Maybe you work at UPS, or maybe you are a school teacher or something like that. And you just own a portion of that. It isn't your main source of income. You don't actively participate in that operation. Then you will have to report the net worth of your portion of that corporation or partnership. So that's kind of how that works. Again, it's a change from 25-26. So the other thing I might add is that if you own farm ground, irrigated pasture ground, what have you, and you rent it out to someone else, then you're going to have to report the value per acre times how many acres you're renting out. So that will have to be reported. The good news is you do not have to report the value of your primary home, nor any retirement accounts, such as your 401k, any IRAs, or any annuities. So those things don't have to be reported.
This is a good time to plug our free appointments if you have any questions, because it can definitely get overwhelming, especially if you're someone who maybe owns a farm, also a business, also have a 529, all sorts of things. If you want some help getting through the weeds there, any of our college planning team would be more than happy to help you out.
Absolutely. We get a lot of phone calls with questions, so we're happy to help people.
Jacquie, how has the FAFSA form changed in recent years? We've talked about some changes, and what should
Mhm.
families know about those updates?
Well, yeah, even from 25-26 to 26-27, there are some changes. So the FAFSA did get a significant makeover a couple of years ago. So it now asks fewer questions, and it is much easier to complete, believe it or not. So the form it does have skip logic, so they incorporated that. So families will answer questions, but in some situations, for example, depending upon the family's income, some families won't have to answer asset questions. So again, it depends upon the level of income they have. Also, the FAFSA is now in 2 parts. So we recommend the parents starting on their side of the FAFSA first. They will complete their portion of the FAFSA. which then sends an invitation to the student. So then the student will log on to studentaid.gov using that FSA ID I mentioned earlier, and then they will complete their portion of the FAFSA. So again, it has gotten a lot easier over the years, and just the number of questions that they asked right there in and of itself is a huge help.
It's definitely come a far way from when my mom completed the FAFSA back when it was still on paper with pencils. So,
Mm-hmm. For
and so
sure. We
it's
used to flip through tax, each page of the tax return. And fortunately, we still have to see the taxes, but we don't have to be flipping through as many pages now. So that's kind of nice for us.
that's true because they do have the IRS like transfer section now where it
Hmm.
can pull in your,
Hmm.
yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah.
So let's say it's October 1st. Families are sitting down to complete the FAFSA. What can they expect the process to look like?
Okay. So again, it's best if you start, there's no right or wrong, but it's best if you start on the parent side of the form. You'll answer some student demographic questions that should match what was used on the student's FSA ID. So the parent's tax information should be transferred from the IRS directly. So as long as they approve consent for that information to be transferred, it will transfer on to the FAFSA, avoiding any input errors. In some cases, it won't transfer if a parent's taxes have been, like their identity has been compromised or something like that. But for the most part, it will transfer. In those situations where it won't, then you will have to manually input that information. The parents will then answer questions about their assets, their family size, the number in college, etc. Once they sign the FAFSA, they'll get to the end and they'll click agree to terms and sign the FAFSA. Then, so that is an electronic signature and it's based on you entering your FSA ID. Then an invitation will be sent to the student. So they will log into the FAFSA. They will accept that invitation from the parent and they will continue on completing their portion of the FAFSA. So they will also agree to have their tax information pulled over, or transferred directly from the IRS if they did in fact file tax returns. And they'll answer the remaining questions. One of which is, what colleges do you want to send your FAFSA to? The student can actually list up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA form. However, and this is important, only the colleges that the student has applied to and been accepted for admission will put together an offer of financial aid for that student. So if a student randomly enters, a college in somewhere else and has no intentions of attending that college, has not applied for admission, has not been accepted, they will not be getting an offer of financial aid. So it is important for those students to be completing their admissions application. The student will then agree to the terms. They will click sign. They will click submit, and then the FAFSA will be electronically submitted.
Yeah, definitely make sure you apply to a college first before you list it out in your FAFSA.
Exactly.
All right, Jackie, I have one final question for you. This is our series of FAFSA podcasts here. So in a future podcast episode, we're going to discuss what happens after the family actually completes the FAFSA. But for now, what can help families if they feel overwhelmed or stuck during the FAFSA process?
So that's where EducationQuest comes in. We provide free assistance in helping families complete their FAFSA and get it submitted to the colleges they list on the FAFSA form. It's a great way, with our assistance, it's a great way to take away the guesswork of completing the forms. You can just give us a call to schedule an appointment, and you can schedule virtually. So we can do virtual appointments or we can do in-person appointments. You can also schedule an appointment by visiting our website, educationquest.org. You can scan to the bottom of the page and click schedule an appointment and choose the time and date that works best for you. Finally, our website, again, educationquest.org. We have some helpful tools. So we have the FAFSA checklist under our publications tab. That is a list of all of the information we had talked about earlier that you need to gather and either bring in with you or have in front of you for your FAFSA completion. On that publications tab, you'll also find a form that explains how to create that FSA ID we talked about earlier. So that just reconfirms all the information that I've given you. And then on our website, we have a FAFSA demo. So that walks you through the FAFSA form and helps you it guides you through the FAFSA if you want to complete it yourself.
Great.
So lots of helpful tools.
Yeah. Well, I think that was all my questions. Thank you again, Jacquie, for joining us.
Absolutely.
And to our audience, like Jacquie mentioned, if you need help with anything college related, you can contact an EducationQuest office. Like Jacquie said, you can find our contact information or schedule an appointment. Again, educationquest.org. While you are there, you can also sign up for the weekly Countdown to College email that's filled with a bunch of college tips, tricks. We'll send you reminders about the FAFSA coming up. So definitely keep your eyes on those because we'll have like our brand new FAFSA demo on there. We'll have some more resources, scholarship info, all sorts of good stuff. So sign up for that at the bottom of our homepage, again, educationquest.org. And finally, just help us get this message out to as many students and families as possible by subscribing to this podcast on your favorite platform and hitting the like button on this episode. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.